My name is Jerry Gill. Today is March the 24th, 2009. I'm visiting with Dick Soergel here in the DeBow room in the OSU library on the campus of Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, Oklahoma. This interview is part of the O State Storage Project, which is part of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Dick, we're delighted to have you with us today. Glad you could take time from Oklahoma City to come down and visit.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here on the campus.
Dick, let me ask you a couple of questions to start off with where you grew up, about your family and early life. Can you share some of that with us?
Be glad to, Jerry. I grew up in Oklahoma City. My father was on the Oklahoma City Fire Department, and we lived in several different places in Oklahoma City. We moved around quite a bit. I had two brothers. Both of them are older. My oldest brother was 6 years older than I am, and he was seriously afflicted with cerebral palsy. And he lived quite a life and passed away. He must have been about 63 or 64 years old, which was very old for his affliction. He also was able to earn both a bachelor's and a master's degree from, hate to say it, but from the University of Oklahoma. And I was quite proud of my brother Johnny. My other brother, also quite proud of, he's 4 years older than I am. His name is Don. And Don ended up coming to Oklahoma State and participated in athletics here. But he had a little different route than I had. When Don finished high school, he was an outstanding athlete and had a baseball and basketball scholarship to Oklahoma University. And he started attending college there and was out for the basketball team, and he decided he didn't like school very much, and so he left and joined the Navy. And he was in the Navy for 4 years, played sports in the Navy, and when he got ready to get out, I was in school here at Oklahoma State, and he determined to join me here, and he came here on a football and baseball scholarship, and he was always a semester behind me in school, so he became my little brother. But that was kind of our family. And then as I was growing up, sports were always very important to us. My dad had been an outstanding athlete. He'd been a three-sport athlete at Oklahoma City Central High School. He'd been all-state in all three sports. And upon graduating from high school, he attended Oklahoma A&M College for a brief time. He was on a football scholarship here at Oklahoma A&M. And I'd say he probably was here maybe 6 weeks, and as he said, he didn't like the smell of ink. So he was also in love with my mother, and so he returned to Oklahoma City. And when he was there in Oklahoma City, OCU had an outstanding athletic program at that time. And part of their methodology was that they'd find athletes and they'd send them to OCU, and they would play in the sports program, but they'd also get a job on the Oklahoma City Fire Department. And so that's how my dad became a fireman, and he loved the fire department and stayed with it for 35 years before retiring. But he attended OCU briefly and was on the OCU football and basketball team. But again, the ink didn't agree with him, so he left and became a full-time Oklahoma City fireman. But his influence in athletics was very significant in our family. And Don was an outstanding athlete. My brother Johnny helped coach some of the athletic teams in high school and in college. We attended Capitol Hill High School in Oklahoma City, which at that time was one of the strongest sports programs in the state, and had an outstanding record and a reputation in sports. And so that's where we attended high school. My brother Don played football, basketball, and baseball there, was an all-state baseball player. Then I came along and I played football, basketball, and baseball there. and I was an All-State and an All-American high school basketball player. But upon my getting near college, I determined that I definitely wanted to go to school and continue my education. And at that time, I felt like the thing I wanted to do was to go to Oklahoma A&M and play basketball for Mr. Iba, and then following basketball, go to work for Phillips 66 and try to play basketball for the 66ers. And that was kind of my goal when I started to think about going to college. So I was recruited by several other universities, but I kind of had my eye on Oklahoma A&M primarily because of Mr. Iba.
Dick, do you recall some of the other schools that were recruiting you at the time?
Well, OU had tried to recruit me. I had letters from Kansas, and I had Pennsylvania. There was a number of schools that had contacted me. Probably the most serious was OU. Bud Wilkinson had me down, and they romanced me a little bit about the football program, but Doyle Perrick had just taken over the basketball coaching job there, and he was a lot more interested in me coming there and playing basketball. Of course, OCU also tried to recruit me. Abe Lemons was coaching there and tried to recruit me to come to OCU to play basketball. But I was a background. He had known my dad. In fact, he coached class in high school in Oklahoma City when my dad was at Central High School. And then later, Mr. Iba played sandlot baseball, and my dad played on some of the same teams. And so they had known each other, and that relationship was there. Plus, the first basketball game I ever saw, the first college basketball game, I went to the all-college tournament in Oklahoma City at the old Municipal Auditorium and watched the Oklahoma Aggies play. And I also used to listen to them on the radio. You know, Kurt Gowdy was the voice of the Aggies at one time, and then Bob Murphy came along afterwards. And, I just kind of fell in love with Oklahoma A&M. And so I still hadn't really committed to anything. And Cliff Spiegel got the head football coaching job here the year before I was planning to attend. And he talked to me about playing football. He wanted me to play football. And I really didn't intend to play football. I intended to play basketball. But he really did encourage me to play, and then he got together with Mr. Iba. And Mr. Iba encouraged me to play too, and they told me that I could come to Oklahoma A&M and I'd have a 4-year scholarship in either sport. If I wanted to quit one of them, I'd still have a 4-year scholarship in the other sport. And so that kind of sold me, and so unintentionally I went out for football.
And Dick, as a clarification now, Cliff Spiegel was your high school coach?
No, Cliff was the brother of my high school coach. C.B. Spiegel was my high school coach. Cliff was a younger brother, and Cliff was a great guy. C.B. was also. They were really, really super people.
Dick, can I ask you, while we're still maybe on high school, just before we get into college, there's a historic game that you played in at that time, we were just beginning to segregate schools. Hadn't really quite done that yet. So there was Douglas High School in Capitol Hill that had never played against each other, because Douglas being all African-American school, black school, and then of course white school. And you guys played, was that your senior year you played?
My senior year.
Just not maybe a lot, but a little bit of background on that.
Well, that's a game that's really has made history. It was something you wouldn't have thought of back at the time, but that was during the integration time, and that's when the blacks went to the black school and the whites went to the white school. And there wasn't any competition athletically between the blacks and whites. However, our high school coach, C.B. Spiegel, had become acquainted with Moses Miller, who was the coach at Douglas at the time. And we always used to scrimmage Douglas before we played an actual game. So when I was a sophomore and when I was a junior, Capitol Hill would suit up over at Capitol Hill Stadium, and we'd go over to Douglas, and Douglas would just beat the dickens out of us. They were very, very physical. And but we'd go over and scrimmage them anyway every year. And then when my senior year, integration was starting to form, and C.B. Spiegel and Moses Miller got together, and they agreed to schedule a football game. And so they did. And Douglas at that time was a powerhouse. They'd won 46 straight football games. They had a tailback named Prentice Gott, who went on to play at the University of Oklahoma, was the first black football player at OU, and then played for the professional Cardinals for a number of years and was an outstanding player. He was Douglas's tailback. And so the contract was made to play, and it was somewhere in the latter part of November. Douglas came to Capitol Hill Stadium. The ball game was televised, which again was amazing. It was a sellout completely. There were people standing all around the fence at the ball game, both blacks and whites. And it was a bitter, bitter football game. It was hard-nosed, hard-played football. And we were fortunate to end up winning the game. I think we won it 13-6. And both teams were beat up after it was over. But that was a major occurrence. And the crowd, there were no problems whatsoever with the crowd. It all turned out good, and that was the beginning of integrating sports in Oklahoma.
And what year was it?
That was 1955. 1955. And people are still writing about it. They're still talking about it. We celebrated, 55 years, something like that.
Did you have a reunion of
Well,
both teams?
No, not both teams, but some. They're not that many still around. That's what happens when you get older, Jerry. There are a lot of them that are gone. But we did get together, and we met at Capitol Hill Stadium when Capitol Hill and Douglas played this past year. And it was it brings back a lot of memories.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's all right.
Your conversation, but you were talking about coming to Oklahoma State and give the background. And I'm sort of interested. I did want to follow up with a question to ask you about baseball. We were talking about football and basketball here, but you also played baseball. Did you have any thought about playing baseball at that time before you enrolled at OSU?
Not really. I had played baseball all my life. In fact, you're talking about historic games. Capitol Hill had one of the greatest baseball programs in the country. In fact, my brother played on the team that started it, and I played on the team that ended a 63-game winning streak. Capitol Hill won 63 straight baseball games. Before we lost, I was on the team. We went down to little town Friendship, Oklahoma, and we played Friendship, and they had a pitcher named Eddie Fisher. And Eddie went on to the big leagues and probably pitched for 12, 15 years in the big leagues. But Friendship beat Capitol Hill down there, and that stopped the winning streak. But then as I progressed in baseball, I was an infielder. And my senior year, or right prior to my senior year, I was playing American Legion baseball, and we didn't have any pitchers. So I told them, well, I'll try to pitch. So I started pitching, and I had some success. We went on, our American Legion team won the state championship, and then we won the regional championship, and then we went to the sectionals in Bismarck, North Dakota, and got beat there by the team that ended up winning the Little World Series. Cincinnati team beat us up there. And then I went on and pitched my senior year in high school, and I didn't lose a game. We won the state championship. I think I was 14 or 15-0, and so that was kind of my baseball ago, but I really didn't think about it much in college, and really had never met Toby Green, the baseball coach at Oklahoma A&M. I had never met him, never talked to him, and I did get to know him because he helped coach football. He was an assistant football coach too at Oklahoma A&M, so I knew who he was, but I really had never had a conversation with him. And one day I was walking down the hall of Gallagher Hall, just walking along, and Coach Green walked up to me and he said, why don't you go in the equipment room and check out some baseball shoes? And so that was how I was recruited to play baseball. And I did. I went in the equipment room and checked out my baseball shoes when baseball season came, and started playing baseball. And fortunately we got to play on a team that won the national championship. We finished third my senior year. I didn't get to go to the tournament. I had a knee injury, but and I made first team All-American in baseball. So that was kind of ironic that things happen like that, but you never know.
Well, Dick, what about, kind of going back a minute, talking about just your student experience, not as a student athlete, but your student experience. First of all, what was your major?
I was a business major. I majored in general business.
Where were some of the classes held, the buildings that classes were held in at that time?
Well, the classroom building was new. We had classes in the classroom building. Morrill Hall is still there. That was the business building, and that was where we had most of the business classes. Then Old Central, we had, I'll never forget, we had English classes and psychology classes in Old Central. And I had an English class down in the basement, and every time it rained, that basement would flood. I can remember that. Then we didn't have to go to class on those rainy days because the class was flooded. But those were some of the main buildings. And of course, the library was here. And I used to spend a lot of time in the library because I studied a lot in the library. And I don't think I've been back in there until now, from the time I left college. So it's.
Dick, do you remember some of your professors that you had?
Oh, very well. Yeah, very well.
Can you share some of your thoughts on some of them?
Eugene Swearingen was one of them. It was a wonderful, wonderful teacher. And Dr. Swearingen became, he was the dean of the business school, and then he became vice president of the university, and almost became president of the university, and then left here and became president of Bank of Oklahoma in Tulsa. And what a neat guy he was. Dr. Jewett was an accounting professor. Joe Kloss was an accounting professor. And one I'll never forget, if anybody ever took Oklahoma history here, they would never forget B.B. Chapman. If you ever had B.B. Chapman, he was quite a teacher. And I can still, me and some of my friends still recite the thing that he taught us that we'll never forget. He would teach us, he'd say, students, your information is no better than your source. And he drilled that into us, and how important that is and how true that is. Your information is no better than your source. So you remember that when you hear things from me here today, that your information is no better than your source.
Okay. What about hangouts on campus? You mentioned the library, maybe student union, different places, and then maybe some off-campus hangouts?
Oh, I used to spend probably more time in the library than anywhere because I was pretty busy when I was in school. I was married. I lived in an apartment, and I was playing sports. My freshman year, I'd practice football in the early afternoon, or say I think we'd start practice at 2:00. And then when the basketball team would practice that night, I'd go practice basketball. And so I was pretty busy. And fortunately, I was able to study in the library in the mornings. I'd come in early in the mornings, and I'd come to the library, and I'd bring my books in here, and I would study. The student union, I spent some time there, but I really didn't have a lot of time to spend with college hangouts. I just didn't have the time.
Dick, what about any student activities, organizations, leadership opportunities? I know, as you said, you're busy in athletics. Did you have a chance to participate, though, in student activities at
I
all?
did in some. I'm a member of the Sig Alpha fraternity, and I'm a member there. The only sport I got to play there was volleyball, and really enjoyed that. Was a neat group of guys, so I got to participate some in some of the social activities. Not a whole lot. Again, our budget was tight, and we just didn't have extra money to spend on a lot of social things. Other clubs, of course, I was a member of the old club, and back when I was in school, the old club was pretty active. In fact, it was very active. First of all, we had some fundraising projects that some people may remember, and that was one of them was we sold freshman beanies. And when you came on the campus as a freshman, the old club would really strong arm you into paying $1 for a freshman beanie, and we raised money that way. And then also the old club was in charge of homecoming. We sponsored the homecoming dance. So we sold tickets to the homecoming dance. We had the homecoming queen and all that. So the old club was much more active during that time than it is today.
Dick, you were talking about being married at the time. Did you get married before you come up to OSU?
No, I got married my freshman year.
And where did you said you lived? Off campus? Did you live in married student housing?
I lived in several places. The first apartment, Jerry, and I can remember it very vividly. It was over on Scott Street, 115 West Scott, and that's just a little bit east of Bennett Hall. And we rented a 3-room furnished apartment, and we paid $35 a month and no bills. And that was our first home. And then we lived in some other apartments right there near that area. Frank Martin, Pappy Martin, used to have some rental property in there. A lot of people remember Frank. He was very active in the band organization. He was the head of that. And we rented an apartment from Pappy Martin there for a while. And then later they started building we called them the new university married student housing out on the north side of the campus, and we moved in there. Prior to that, the university had some married student housing, but it wasn't too good. They had Vet Village, it was one area. Mm-hmm. And then they had the college courts over on 6th Street. And those were old Quonset huts that had come out of World War II, and they rented those to married students.
Dick, do you remember how much you got paid per month being married as part of your scholarship stipend?
Yes. When I came to school, an athletic scholarship you were entitled to room, board, books, and tuition, and $15 a month. The $15 a month was supposed to be for laundry money and incidentals. A little later on, the NCAA did away with that $15 a month, and I still think it's a travesty. But what a married student would get, they would get the equivalent of what the athletic department would have to pay for their room and board, and then the $15 a month. And in my recollection, that would total about $85 a month, $85 or $86 a month, and that was my paycheck. Of course, the athletic department went ahead and bought my books and paid for my tuition, but that was my scholarship.
Great.
And we'd have to save enough money in the summer to subsidize that, and that's what we did.
Dick, we were talking earlier about being a 3-sport letterman in the background there. Did you have a favorite sport out of those 3? And you played football, basketball, and baseball at Oklahoma State. Was there a favorite one for you?
Not really. Again, I didn't intend to play three sports. My intention was I'd probably find something that I liked better than something else, and I would quit. But I started playing football, and I really enjoyed it. We had a good team. We had good teams. We had winning seasons all 3 years I was there. In 1958, we beat Florida State in the one and only Bluegrass Bowl. Had some success, and I really enjoyed it. In basketball, I came along right in between the time when Oklahoma A&M or Oklahoma State was in the Missouri Valley Conference and changed to the Big 8 Conference. So I got to play in the Missouri Valley in basketball and some of the football schools too, and then got to play in the Big 8 as I was a junior and a senior. And my first year here, the basketball team was successful, and we made it to the Final 8 in the NCAA basketball tournament. Kansas State beat us out, but that was a successful team. We thoroughly enjoyed it. And then in baseball, baseball was a lot of fun, and the guys I played with were really a neat group of guys, and we had a lot of fun, and we had a lot of success. We won the conference. The 2 years we were really in the Big 8 in baseball 3 years, but we still are angry over that first year. We were tied with Missouri for the Big 8 championship, and we went to Columbia to play a 3-game series with Missouri. And we had a real strong pitching staff. Missouri had one real good pitcher, and Missouri beat us the first game. And then it started to rain that night. And it rained some. We don't think it rained that much. But about 8 o'clock that next morning, Hy Simmons was a Missouri coach, and he called Coach Green. He said, "Coach," he said, "it's too wet. The games are rained out." So we didn't get to play Missouri those last 2 games. And we think we could have beaten them and won the Big 8 championship that year, but didn't happen. But then the following year we won the Big 8 championship, and we won the national championship. And then the following year we won the Big 8 championship, and we were in the national tournament in Omaha. And I had a problem with my knee. I don't know what really caused it, but my knee was swollen, and they put me in a hospital. So I didn't get to go to the nationals, but the team still played well, and I think finished second or third in the national tournament.
Well, you alluded to earlier, Dick, about playing the 3 sports and taking your classwork. Did it take some particular time management and discipline to make that all work? I mean, I can just imagine the hours you were putting in.
Absolutely. Jerry, in between classes, if I had an hour in between classes, I had to go find a place to hit those books. And I was fortunate when I had a pretty good educational background. Some people, may not realize, but at Capitol Hill High School, we got a good education. If you were willing to want the education. Now, if you didn't want it, that you could probably get by without. But I really appreciated my teachers. I had good teachers. And then when I came to college, I thought it was really going to be hard. I thought it was going to be just awfully hard, and I wasn't going to be equipped for it. Well, mid-semester, my freshman year, I think I had about a 3.6 or something like that, grade point average, and then I decided, well, it's not that hard, and then I kind of got lazy. and I ended up, making adequate grades, but I got lazy, and in my last 2 years, I was on the Dean's Honor Roll. And I found out if you applied yourself and you went to class, that was another thing. I didn't miss class. I went to class. That's what I came for an education, and that was important to me. Because I really ended up being the first one in my family to graduate from college. The others had gone, but none of them had graduated before I did. So I had to make use of my time.
Dick, do you know for sure? My understanding is that you were the last three-sport letterman we had at Oklahoma State University.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I think people really don't understand the magnitude of the hours in a year's time that takes and that requires. It's incredible. I think it'd be almost. And this is in fairly modern era of sports. It's not back in the 30s or 20s when we had some of them that did that. So it's quite a. I mean, does that give you a sense of pride for having been able to do that?
Well, it does.
Mm-hmm.
It does. I'm proud of the fact that I was able to do it, but I'm also proud of the fact that I have made so many friends through the various teams that other people aren't able to do. And when I played three sports, there weren't many other people doing that in my era either. So it was very rare, very rare. And it would have been impossible had it not been for my coaches. Cliff Spiegel had played football and basketball at the University of Oklahoma. Mr. Iva played football, basketball, and baseball at the college he went to in Missouri. And they appreciated all sports. Both of them did, and they encouraged me, and they let me have that opportunity. They didn't give me anything. They made me make the teams, but they allowed me the opportunity. Mr. Iba, to allow you to miss practice for a certain period of time, that was just almost unheard of. He believed in practice. But he let me go through the football season and then come out right after football and start playing basketball. In fact, Jerry, and this is something that was another thing I'll never forget. We won the Bluegrass Bowl in 1958, and we played in Louisville, Kentucky. It was on national television. It was 5 degrees at kickoff. They'd had a blizzard hit the week of the game. They had to scrape the field off with bulldozers. It was ice. We played Florida State. Both teams wore tennis shoes because the cleats wouldn't go down into the turf. And the national television had a rookie television color man named Howard Cosell who did the color for the game. Mm-hmm. And we were fortunate enough to beat Florida State, and that was about, early December when they played that bowl game. Well, less than 2 weeks later, I was back in Kentucky. I was back in Lexington, and I was playing basketball. I made the basketball team, and I made the trip. We were playing in the Kentucky Invitational Tournament in Lexington in less than 2 weeks. And in that particular tournament, West Virginia was there, and they had a guy that turned out pretty good named Jerry West. And we played Ohio State University there. They were in that tournament also. And at that time, John Havlicek and Larry Siegfried and Lucas were all part of that team. And then Kentucky had their usual great basketball team. So we got to play some really top teams. But I'll never forget running up down that floor. That basketball conditioning is different than football, and I was ill prepared, but they took me anyway, and I'm most grateful that they did, because that was a wonderful experience.
What you were part of, as you alluded to earlier, the 1959 National Championship Team. I guess that was a pretty special, year for you. And I want to ask you some more specific questions later about that, but I guess that was a highlight for you, one of the things you did. But could you share a little bit of maybe some of your highlights in all three sports, some things you remember, maybe significant players, events that you recall?
Oh, I've got so many memories of things that happened, in football. We played a lot of different schools. I remember many times remember the games you lost more than the ones you won. They stick with you. You know, we got beat in 1958 by the Air Force Academy out here in Stillwater. Air Force went on to play in the Cotton Bowl that year, but they beat us 33-29, and we were ahead of them, and they had a quarterback named Richie Mayo, and he threw a touchdown pass with 9 seconds to go in the ball game. It was just frustrating. And then that same year, we played OU out in Lewis Field, and it was a defensive knockdown drag out. They beat us 7-0, and we let Bobby Boyd run a keeper about 30 yards and for the only touchdown in the game. And I think I had a shot at tackling him, but I missed him, and I'll never forget those things like that. I also remember going up to Kansas. Remember a lot of things about defense. You know, you played defense. Well, I had to play defense too. We had to play both ways when I was there. And I remember playing defensive safety, and we were playing the University of Kansas up in Lawrence, and it was one of those cold, gray days in Kansas. And Kansas had a real good football team. They had John Hadle was playing with them, and they had a big halfback named Curtis McClinton. And McClinton weighed about 220 pounds and was the Big 8 hurdles champion. He went on and played in the National Football League for a long time. And I remember I was playing defensive safety, and Kansas had the ball down on about our 5-yard line, and they ran a sweep. And I can remember going up and laying my helmet across McClinton's numbers like you're supposed to, and then that's the last thing I remember. he liked to knock me through the end zone. I knocked him out of bounds, but that was the only game I ever came out of. He really put a lick on me, and I'll never forget it. And I remember going to Milwaukee, and we played Marquette in Milwaukee one year, and I remember we were behind with about 3 minutes to go and had the ball on our own 3-yard line. And we took it down the field, run the little sideline passes and stuff, and scored a touchdown right at the end of the ball game and beat Marquette. It was a memorable game. I have a lot of memories. Those are football memories. Basketball, the one I'll never forget, we beat Kansas in Lawrence when I was a senior, and we weren't that good a basketball team. But we got ahead of Kansas, and we could take care of the basketball. And I was one of our centers, believe it or not. I had to play inside. So the guy that I was guarding, the guy that guarded me was a guy named Hightower, Wayne Hightower. He was about 6'8", and he ended up going into pros and playing pro ball. Was a good basketball player, but he was trying to guard me, and we went into Mr. Iva's famous delay game. And I'm telling you, trying to defense that, it would wear you out. And gosh, that poor old guy that was guarding me before the game was over, he wanted out of that game so bad. And since he was so tall, Hightower was so tall, Mr. Iva would have me bring the ball down the court. So I'd take the ball in as a guard, and at the opposite end, Hightower ended up fouling out because he wanted out. He was just grabbing and holding on. And we went on to beat the Jayhawks in Lawrence. You don't do that very often.
When did you play in the famous game against Will Chamberlain?
No, I was a freshman.
Mm-hmm. Did you see the game?
Oh, absolutely. What a thrill that was.
We beat Kansas and Will Chamberlain.
Yeah, Will Chamberlain.
Last second jump shot.
Mel Wright hit that shot right about the top of the circle. And I'll never forget it. It was tremendous.
Well, did you play basketball with Eddie Sutton?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, like a senior when you were a sophomore.
He was a senior when I was a sophomore.
What do you remember about Eddie as a player?
Oh, Eddie was a good player. Eddie was, whether people know it or not, Eddie was a real fine offensive player. He wasn't necessarily that that much of a defensive player, although you had to play defense if you're going to play for Mr. Ivan. But Eddie could really shoot the ball. And in the Kansas game, Mel hit the winning shot, but Eddie knocked in a bunch of baskets from outside. If they'd had the three-point shot, they didn't have a three-point shot at that time. Eddie would have scored a bunch of points because he could really shoot. And he was a sound player. Eddie was always sound. He didn't have the greatest speed, but he didn't make mistakes, could shoot the ball well, and played good defense, and was a good team member. Eddie was a good guy to play with.
Was he a graduate assistant coach after he graduated for a year or two?
Yes, he was.
He maybe helped coaching then also later?
Yeah, he did. He helped coach the next year. We had a fair team then. Arlen Clark was our main player, and I was our number 2 scorer, and that was bad when I was a number 2 scorer. But Arlen was a good player. He was an All-American here, and Eddie was a graduate assistant.
Dick, were there some other players that stand out in your mind in any of those sports that you played with? I mean, they're all good, certainly, but some that you recall especially.
Oh yes, we had some really good athletes. I think maybe the best athlete I ever played with anywhere was Jerry Adair. Jerry Adair was a fantastic player. He had played football, basketball, and baseball at Sand Springs, but he came to Oklahoma State. He didn't play football. He played basketball and baseball. And in basketball, he was a terrific basketball player. He was about 6'2" or 6'3", guard, and quick. He could really, really play. And then in baseball, he was our shortstop. He was an All-American baseball player, and he was a leading hitter. And we'd have had a lot better basketball team the following year if Jerry hadn't signed a professional baseball contract. He signed a pro baseball contract and went on and played. I bet he played 12 or 13 years in the major leagues. And at one time, I know he held the record for the most consecutive chances at second base without an error. He was a gifted athlete. In addition to Adair, Tony Banfield was a football player I played with that he played halfback and was a defensive safety. And Tony went on to play in the pros for the Houston Oilers. He made All-Pro down there. And outstanding athlete and a super guy. Other basketball players, Arlen Clark was an outstanding basketball player. He made All-American here and then went on and played for the Phillips 66ers. But a lot of good athletes. We had a lot of good athletes.
What do you remember about your coaches? I guess just maybe start with Cliff Spiegel in football, of course Mr. Ibe in basketball, and then Toby Green in baseball. Could you share a little of your stories about those coaches?
Well, our coaches were all good. Cliff was really a sound football coach, and a true gentleman. I don't believe I ever heard Cliff Spiegel say a swear word at all. He was just a very clean-cut, super nice gentleman. Some people would say he was too nice to be a coach. Perhaps that's true, but he was a good coach. He was very sound. He had good assistants. Harry Buffington was an outstanding line coach. I think we had 5 assistants, and they were all good. Jim Spavital was a good. Most all of them were Aggies. They'd played here. Dorsey Gibson,
Jack Baker.
Jack Baker. It was a Oklahoma A&M group that coached us in football, and we had some good schemes. I would say that we were far too conservative on offense. We tried to play defensive football, and we had some athletes that could have done better, I think, offensively if we'd been a little more aggressive. Another outstanding athlete we had was a guy named Dwayne Wood. Yeah. And Dwayne was a super halfback from Wilburton and went on and played for the Kansas City Chiefs. In fact, Dwayne may be one of the only guys I ever heard of that played a full year in the Canadian Football League, and they finished their season earlier, and then he went right on with the Chiefs and played their full season. So Dwayne was truly a gifted athlete. But they could catch the ball, and I could throw the ball. But we didn't loosen them up quite enough. Jerry, my senior year, I was the 10th leading passer in the nation, and I completed over 60% of my passes. But we just didn't throw it enough. And we could have, when we'd spread them out a little bit and throw the look ins and the sidelines and the corners and the posts, that we had the people that could have done it. But determined more that we were going to run the ball in there, and I'm sorry we didn't try to throw it more. But they were sound coaches. Their schemes were good. Mr. Iba, nobody ever had sounder schemes than he did. Of course, he was defensive oriented too. You didn't shoot the ball a lot for him. If you did, you better hit it or you weren't going to be playing.
Well,
he didn't mind you shooting if you hit it.
Well, he was legendary for his discipline. Was he as tough as everybody said he was?
He was.
And did you participate in any of those 3 days they had during Christmas?
Absolutely, and it was awful.
Can you share a little bit about that?
Oh, you used to hate the holidays because we'd practice 3 times a day, and if you taped your ankles, you didn't have time to take the tape off. You just leave it on till the next practice, and you'd go out there and start practicing. And Mr. Iba, I grew to be very, very close to him in later years. We worked together, and he was a really tremendous friend. We talked a lot about his philosophy, and he didn't think hard work hurt you, and he didn't believe you got stale, but he did believe that you needed to change your drills. He said, as long as you keep changing your drills, you can just work them and work them and work them. And I can remember he did, and I also can remember, and I do believe this, that sometimes when we'd go on the road and play out of town, and we'd have a shoot around the morning before the game, some of those shoot arounds would end up being full-time scrimmages. And that night when we get ready for the game, we were a little bit tired-legged, and I think that wasn't always good. But I'll always remember, Mr. Iba, he made sure he had your attention. I love the way today you watch basketball teams come over to timeouts, and maybe they bring a bunch of chairs out on the floor, and you just watch the players, and they're looking around and gawking around. Well, when you came out for a timeout with Mr. Iba, you lay down on your stomach facing him. He had 5 players gathered around him. He was sitting on the bench, and you couldn't look around. He had your absolute attention. You weren't going to be looking at the girls. You were going to pay attention to what he said. And he had great ideas. He was just so sound. And then Toby Green, baseball coach, he was another sound coach, but Toby never said much. But when he did, you better jump, because he meant it. And I was fortunate to really play for good coaches.
Your favorite Henry P. Iba story? You got a favorite one, Dick?
Oh, I've got so many of them, but one that he loved to go mushroom hunting. And he'd grown up hunting mushrooms up in Missouri. And after I was working for him, he used to just love getting me and Buell McElroy and Sam Aubrey, and we'd go mushroom hunting. And if you never hunted mushrooms, you go down on the riverbank, and you go where all the briars are. All those briars are there, and you wade through those briars, and you look for mushrooms, and you have to find them there kind of in a shady place. And we'd find the mushrooms, and we'd pick the briars out. And you were kind of afraid to eat them anyway, but if Mr. Iba said they were good, they had to be good. But he used to get the biggest kick out of that. He'd come up and he'd say, "You ready to go mushroom hunting?" I said, "No, Mr. Iba, I don't want to go again." "Oh yeah, let's go mushroom." And then I remember he liked to fish too, and he had an old fly rod, and he liked to catch frogs on that fly rod. And he'd see a frog sitting out there on the lake or the pond, and he'd take that old fly and he'd flip it out there, and that frog would grab it, and you had something on there when you got that frog. But I remember we went out to Carl Blackwell one time, and I drove. He had a pickup truck, and of course Mr. Iba was retired, and I was driving his truck, and we went out there and we fished for a while, and then we decided we were going to go look for another place, and we got on one of those roads, and I got that truck stuck on high center. And there we were, and of course, there are no cell phones or anything, you're just out there. And we laughed about that. He said, "Here I am, an old man," and he said, "You don't know what you're doing." And so we ended up, we put enough stuff under the wheels to get it out, and we got it off high center. But we used to laugh about that. A lot of good things about Mr. Iba.
Dick, what do you remember about the facilities that you played in? Could you share a little bit about, not anything like they are today, but what do you remember about them?
Well, we really didn't have the best facilities. It was kind of sad. Football, particularly. In football, our dressing room was down in the basement of Gallagher Hall, and Gallagher Hall leaked when it rained, and it was kind of like Old Central. Our dressing room, when it rained, our dressing room would be flooded, and you'd have to stand on the benches to put your equipment on. So that wasn't real good, and the atmosphere wasn't very good either. It was dark and dreary, and so it just wasn't real conducive to building up your enthusiasm. But the football field itself, the practice fields were good. They had good turf on them, and they worked out fine. Didn't have any lights, and we were glad of that. We had one old floodlight that was down at the southwest corner of the practice field. And when we'd be practicing down there and get late, we'd kind of move under that one old floodlight, and it was dark, wasn't very good. But then also about every day, when some of those football players would be going to school, they'd go knock that floodlight out so we wouldn't have to practice late. Oh, I can remember some of those things. And then the football field itself was fine. The stadium wasn't the greatest, but it was adequate, and the baseball park was adequate. And the basketball, Gallagher Arena was a super place to play basketball. That floor, I'm glad they still have it. It was the best floor I ever played on. It was really, really good, and the atmosphere and everything was good. So the basketball situation was the best.
What do you remember about down under Gallagher?
Oh, that's another thing. Down under Gallagher was the basement, and it was dirt, all dirt floor, and had the concrete pillars that were in there in between, and that's where we'd practice football sometimes down there when the weather would get bad. Of course, there wasn't a lot of room in between those pillars, and you could do one-on-one blocking down there pretty good because there wasn't any place to escape. And then the baseball team practiced down there. We had a batting cage, and it was a rope batting cage and room for a pitcher and a catcher. And so you could put a batter in there, and the pitcher could throw batting practice to them. And Toby Green was a detailed-oriented person. He'd sit behind the screen, and he would chart every pitch. And he would chart the hitters, whether you hit the ball solid or fouled it off or missed it or what. He'd have a book on you, and he'd use that as part of his basis for how you made the team. And I'll never forget. One day I was down there. I never got to go down there very often because I didn't get out early enough for baseball. But I did go down there, and I was pitching batting practice, and you had a protector screen that would go up about waist high in front of the pitcher so you could duck behind it and dodge those line drives coming back. And they use them all the time, and they still use them today. It's kind of a protection for the batting practice pitcher. And one day I was down there pitching, and the catcher caught the ball, and he was throwing it back to me. Well, he hit it and ricocheted right off the top of that protector screen and hit me right square in the head. And I thought Toby was going to kill that catcher, and he was scared to death. He was a freshman catcher, and he was scared to death. Well, it hit me in the head, and fortunately that hit me in the head was the best place. It didn't hurt me much. But he was scared to death, and I walked down to him, and I grabbed him around the shoulder and said, "Can't you throw any harder than that?" And everybody just laughed and went on, and that was the end of. He didn't get in any trouble after that.
Did it ever get a little dusty down there?
Oh, it got dusty and dirty, and the balls would get dirty. That old red dirt down there. And I can remember Toby sitting up in the equipment room, and he'd use a can of pet milk, and he'd wash those old baseballs with pet milk so it would whiten them up. And I can remember him sitting there doing that so we could take batting practice down there.
Dick, we're going to take a break here for a minute. Okay, we're continuing the interview here with Dick Soergel. Okay. Dick, we were talking about earlier about the Douglas, ball game with Capitol Hill, kind of the period of integration. This is also a time of integration in intercollegiate athletics. And wanted to ask you if you remember some of the early African-American student athletes enrolled at Oklahoma State University. And if you do, could you share some of your memories about that?
Absolutely. We had the first black athletes that came and played here at Oklahoma State. Of course, the first one was Orlando Hazley. He was a track man. And I wasn't on the track team, but knew Orlando, and what a fine gentleman he was. And truly a great sprinter. He was a 9.4 sprinter for real, and he ran with the greatest sprinters of that time. And he was also a guy that was he could get along with people. And I'm in awe of those early black athletes because of some of the things they had to go through, because it wasn't easy. Many restaurants wouldn't serve them. They couldn't stay at some of the hotels. It was just difficult. Orlando, I believe he came the same year I did. I think he was in my class. I think he came here in '56, and then in '57 we had the first black football player that played here, a guy named Chester Pittman. And Chester was a little halfback from Wewoka. And what a nice guy Chester was, and he was a good teammate and just a good guy to be with. And I'll never forget some of the difficulties he went through. We used to always play Arkansas in Little Rock. And when we took Chester over to Little Rock with us, we stayed in the hotel downtown Little Rock. And when we drove the buses up to the hotel, Chester didn't get off, and we didn't know what was happening. And we soon found out that Chester couldn't stay in the hotel with us. They had to take him to a hotel for blacks. And we really felt bad about it, and we were trying to console Chester. And I remember he laughed at us, and he said, "Guys," he said, "don't you worry about me." He said, "I'll have a lot more fun than you will." He just could handle things like that. And then I'll never forget how bad it was when he went out on the football field. I think he was the first black player that had ever played there in War Memorial Stadium. And the crowd booed him. And it was just awful. And old Chester just endured it. Then we used to play the University of Houston too, and we stayed in a yacht club down near Galveston Bay. And Chester wasn't allowed to go into the dining room with us. So his roommate was Tony Banfield, and Tony would just eat in the room with Chester. But it was just tough for those guys. Then the first black basketball player we had, was a guy named L.C. Gordon. And L.C. was from Memphis. And another really, really nice guy. And he could get along. I mean, those early pioneers, they had to take a lot of abuse. I can remember going into a cafeteria in Kansas City. Our basketball team went in, and we lined up with our trays on the counter, and they came over and said, well, we can't serve LC in here. And we all just got up and left. But that kind of thing went on, and they had to be able just to turn the other cheek and keep going to make it work.
Was there a black baseball player that you played with?
There were a couple of black guys that came out for the baseball team, but none of them really made the team, so I don't really remember them. Never got close to any of those guys.
Dick, were there some special honors and recognition you got first as a student? You said you made the Dean's Honor Roll a few times, in academic. Any other honors recognition as a student do you recall?
Oh, I was one of the, what do you call them, Redskin congratulates, something like that, that recognized some of the students at OSU. I received an award from my fraternity. It was kind of a significant sort of an award, more academically and athletically. It was kind of a combination thing. That was about it. I wasn't a great student. Don't get me wrong. I could go to class if I worked hard. I could pass, but I wasn't a great student. But I could make my grades.
You mentioned some of your athletic honors. Can you just kind of tick off some of those? I know you started in all three sports for 3 years. Is that correct? Some recognition, conference, national recognition in any or all of those sports that you recall?
Well, of course, I made All-American in baseball. In football, I didn't make All-American or All-Conference. I never got to play in a conference in football. We were in between conferences. We didn't have a full schedule of Big 8 teams, and we just gotten out of the Missouri Valley. So I made they put me on the all-academic Big 8 team. But I was either the leading passer or the second leading passer in the conference, even though we didn't play a full slate of Big 8 games. So I didn't do that well there. And then my junior year, I made the honorable mention on the all-conference basketball team as a junior. Didn't play that good as a senior, but those were some of the things that happened when I was in college.
Well, you graduated in 1960, is that right? With the
1960.
bachelor's degree in general business?
General business.
Mm-hmm. Can you share a little bit about your highlights, kind of your professional career in your life? Not maybe a whole lot, but just kind of hit some highlights after you left OSU.
Well, when I graduated from OSU, I first tried to play professional football, and I signed a contract with the Boston Patriots in the American Football League, and it was the first year of the American Football League. The Green Bay Packers had tried to sign me, and at that time, they didn't pay professional athletes like they do today, particularly football players. And the average, not the average, but the top quarterbacks in the NFL at that time were probably making $25,000 a year. That was about the tops. So they didn't pay that much. And I ended up getting, I think I got $500 more to sign with Boston than with Green Bay. But I always remember Green Bay trying to sign me. The coach there that was trying to convince me I should go ahead and come with Green Bay told me, he said, now, we really need a quarterback here. We've got an older quarterback named Lamar McCann who's kind of about over the hill, and then we got some young rookie named Bart Starr that he's not there either. So Bart Starr ended up having a pretty good career, so I probably made a good choice anyway. I went to went to the Patriots, and I stayed there for 2 months. And we got through the exhibition season, and the first year of the American League was quite an interesting time because you didn't have any nucleus to start with. You had to build a team from scratch. And I wasn't ready to be a pro quarterback my first year. I really had never thrown drop back passes to speak of. They kept me around for quite a while, but I really wasn't ready to start as a NFL quarterback. So right before I left, they brought in a guy named Babe Pirelli, and Pirelli had a lot of experience and had been an All-American in Kentucky, and they also had another older guy that from Boston College that had played in the Canadian League named Butch Songen. So those were the two quarterbacks they kept, and they kept me around so long that it would have been difficult for me to go somewhere else. And another significant thing at that time, very few of your football players had what are called a no-cut contract. In other words, if you signed a professional football contract, you might get a bonus, whatever kind of bonus you signed for, but your contract really didn't take effect until you were on the team when the season started. So they could wait right to the end and cut you, and then they didn't have to pay you. And I found out that professional football, as all professional sports, it's a business. And they kept me around to the end, and they said, well, Denver and a couple other teams would like to have you. Well, I knew if I went somewhere else, it'd be just such a quick look. It wasn't worth my time, and I had a family to support, so I needed to go to work. Then, after that didn't work out, I went into the life insurance business and was trying to make a living there. And before I was kind of struggling along there, and working in Stillwater, lived in Stillwater, loved it, and working for Bob Fenimore. And I found out that Cliff Spiegel wanted to hire me as a freshman football coach. Well, that would have really helped me. It would have given me a chance to make a few extra dollars and also continue in the insurance business. But just prior to things happening there, the athletic cabinet here at OSU determined that the business of athletics was growing, and they needed somebody to be a business and ticket manager for the athletic program here. And one of the people that was instrumental on that athletic cabinet was Dean Swearingen, who had been one of my professors, and he was touting me for that job. And at that time, Mr. Iba had another gentleman that was working for him. He'd been hired as his secretary, really, and his name was Harry Dahlman. And Harry served to some degree in that function as a business and ticket manager, but not really. But Mr. Iva was really, really loyal to all of his people, and he wasn't interested in replacing Harry. But Swearingen and the athletic cabinet, I think, kept working on him, and they recognized they needed to have somebody. And they ended up hiring me as OSU's first athletic business and ticket manager.
What year was it?
It was 1962. And I worked for OSU for 16 years. And it got into a period of time during the Floyd Gas era that there was a lot of controversy in the athletic program, and I determined that I probably needed to get out. It might have been a mistake, but I determined that I needed to change professions. Well, I was about 40 years old, a little young to start changing professions. But I had an opportunity to join a bank, and I was hired as a vice president of a small bank here in Stillwater, and learned an awful lot in that small bank because you had to do everything. And then I determined again that I needed to move on to where there was more opportunities, and I had some friends at the Liberty National Bank in Oklahoma City. So Gordon Greer, a lot of you OSU people will know Gordon. Well, he was the president of Liberty, and I knew Gordon. So I asked him if I could interview there for a job, and I was thinking about the lending field because that's kind of what the direction I was going, to be a loan officer at a bank. And I happened to go to the Liberty, and I had lunch with Gordon, and while I was there, another fellow named Ken Brown saw me. Well, I didn't realize that he had seen me there, but I had known Ken. I'd played baseball with Ken at Cherokee, Oklahoma in a semi-pro league, and Ken remembered me. And he went to Gordon, and he said, "What's he doing here?" And he told him I was looking for a job, and Ken had a job open as a division manager in the investment department. Well, I didn't know anything about investments. I knew a little bit about loans and a little bit about banking, but not anything about investments. But Ken asked Gordon, "Would you mind if I talked to him?" So he called me and had me come down and interview and visit with me a little bit, and then he had some other people talk to me, and I told him, "Ken, I don't know anything about investments." He said, "Well, you can learn." And I said, "Well, yeah, I probably can." But anyway, they ended up hiring me as the manager of the government investment division of the Liberty National Bank. Well, I didn't know a treasury bill from a treasury note to whatever, and I just remember I got me a bunch of books, and I went into my office and I shut the door and I started reading, and I started learning, and I learned a lot. And I managed a group of people there, and they were good to manage, and went on and took over the investment department completely, helped manage the bank's portfolio, and did a lot of trades, traveled to a lot of banks here in Oklahoma. I probably have been in more than 100 banks here in Oklahoma, calling on different bankers, selling investment services. So I stayed in the investment area, and the Liberty in Oklahoma City ended up buying the First National Bank of Tulsa. And they merged the two banks, and when they merged the two banks, my area went to the Tulsa office. So that offered me an opportunity to move into the trust department. And the head of the trust department at Liberty asked me if I would be interested in coming to work there. So I started to work in trust, and again, a new learning experience. I didn't know anything about trust, but I ended up in the trust department, and I worked with employee benefit plans, pension plans, profit sharing plans. Did a lot of work with government regulations, but then eventually I had the opportunity to come back to investments, which I truly love. And I ended up being the manager for trust investments for the Liberty Banks of Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And we managed a lot of assets. We had over $2 billion in trust assets. I was responsible for that. We had, I don't know how many accounts. We also had the safekeeping of probably somewhere over $6 or $7 billion worth of assets that we were responsible for. So that's what I ended up doing, and we were doing real well up until the Bank One of Columbus, Ohio came in and bought the Liberty. Well, Bank One was a large national bank, and my job was going to go to Columbus. Well, I didn't want to go to Columbus, so I retired, and that's what I am right now, retired, and I've enjoyed it. I had a very enjoyable working career, but I'm enjoying retirement now, and the Bank One of Columbus ended up being purchased by J.P. Morgan Chase. That's who they are now. So that bank consolidation was quite a time.
Well, Dick, could we go back in a little bit, the I guess nearly 16, 18 years you spent at Oklahoma State University,
Mm-hmm.
and I know you moved into finally I think an assistant athletic director and business manager
Mm-hmm.
position. Well, can you talk a little bit about some of the people, staff, coaches you remember during that period? So this was from 1962 to 80, somewhere along in there, is that correct?
Yeah. it was amazing the number of staff and coaches that came through this university. The football coaches, you could just, there were so many, and so many that went on to be very, very successful. The first one I remember that became very successful, that wasn't here when I was working here, but was one of my freshman coaches, a graduate assistant, was Buddy Ryan. Of course, Buddy went on to fame with the Chicago Bears and so forth. And then after I went to work for OSU, the famous one that I remember working with that was such a character was Sammy Ball. Slinging Sammy Ball became the freshman football coach here one year. And Sammy was a real character. Of course, he was a legend in the National Football League. He was maybe the greatest passer of all time. Ended up doing a lot of different things. Ended up coaching the Houston Oilers. I think that was his last coaching job. But we had him here as our freshman coach one year. And then I can remember Bowden Wyatt. Bowden Wyatt, oh man, what a character he was. And Bowden was he had a great football reputation. He'd been the head football coach at Wyoming, and he left the Wyoming job and went to Arkansas and was very successful at Arkansas. They won the Southwest Conference. Then he went back to his alma mater, Tennessee, the University of Tennessee, and they hired him. And he coached there and had a great deal of success. I think they were the #1 team in the nation at one time. They had Johnny Majors as their tailback, and Bowden was very successful, but then he kind of dropped by the wayside, and he ended up coming to Oklahoma State. And Jerry, as you say, you remember him, and he was a tough old boy, but a real character. And of course, Frank Gantz went on, coached Kansas City. Just so many of them. Jim Stanley. He was on Phil Cutchin's coaching staff. Willie Zapalak, Elwood Kettler. Many coaches that have been through this school and have done well and have been successful, and many of them have gone on to other places. And of course, I retired or resigned here at Oklahoma State just when Jimmy Johnson came along. So I was here more through the Jim Stanley, Floyd Gass, Phil Cutchin, Cliff Spiegel era.
What about athletic directors that you worked with? Of course, Mr. Iva, obviously, and then you worked with, was it Floyd Gass?
Floyd Gass. Mm-hmm. Mr. Iva, I just can't say enough good things about him. There never was a man that was more loyal. If you were his staff and you were with him, man, he might get on you about something, but he was loyal to his people, maybe even to a fault. But what a great guy. And his management philosophy was different. I don't believe we ever had any staff meetings. He didn't manage that way. He did it one-on-one. He'd get you in his office and he'd talk about things with you, and you knew he was in charge. There wasn't any doubt about that. But he could handle people. He was a great people person. And the people that he had were all very loyal to him. They were very, very loyal. Sam Aubrey was his assistant basketball coach. Nobody was any more loyal than Sam. Ralph Higgins was the track coach, and nobody was more loyal than Hig. Leyburn Harris was the golf coach, loyal as he could be. Cliff Spiegel was the football coach, and he was loyal. They all worked together. Toby Green was very, very loyal to Mr. Iva. It was really a family. Otis Wild was the sports information director, and all the people got along. We got along with each other. It wasn't a real selfish organization, and that's what made it good. We helped each other. I remember Higgins and Leyburn. They took care of the scoreboard for the basketball team forever. And they didn't get paid for that. They just did it. They'd run the clock and take care of the scoreboard. And I remember when Higgins would have a track meet, some of us would go out and help him mark the track off and put the hurdles up, and we just worked together. And it was a good situation. And things started changing a little bit. Mr. Iba left, and a lot of politics got involved. Got very, very political here for a while. Floyd Gass came in, and Floyd was a nice guy, but Floyd came in with a lot of the politics attached to him. He was very close to the Board of Regents, and the Board of Regents really supported Floyd in becoming the athletic director here. And I worked with Floyd and got along with him very, very well. He just kind of left me alone and let me run my shop, and we got along good. But Floyd had a lot of controversy, and again there were a lot of people taking shots at people, and it got to be where it was kind of frustrating with all the politics that were going on. People were going to the Board of Regents and trying to get this person fired or that person fired, and it wasn't the family situation that Mr. Iba had initially.
Well, Dick, what were some of the issues, the main issues at that time when you were working?
Well, of course, when Cliff Spiegel got fired and they brought in Phil Cutchin, Phil's attitude, Phil was a nice guy too and a good coach, but his attitude was much more dominated by football. He thought football ought to be it, and that hadn't been the way it was at Oklahoma State, and it created some difficulties. And Phil went ahead and did some good things. He brought the football program up. He got the facilities improved. They built the football dressing room down there on the corner. He got the offices improved. He did a lot of good things. But I think he didn't lend toward the camaraderie that we'd had previously. Then when Floyd came in, there was a sentiment around that, the reason that Oklahoma State's football program wasn't good was because of Mr. Iba. And that's not true. Mr. Iba loved football. He wanted football to be successful. But a lot of the controversy stemmed around our football program wasn't as good as we'd like to have it. And Mr. Iba took a lot of that blame, and consequently all the people connected with Mr. Iba took on some of that blame. I took on a bunch of it. It wasn't all that much fun. Floyd he always indicated to me that, he didn't indicate that I was on shaky ground, but the Board of Regents was out there, and they were trying to micromanage this university at that time. Dr. Comm could attest to that if he were still around. It was difficult.
He had a different AD in mind, I think, didn't he, with
Yes.
the selection process?
Yes, he did.
We won't go there. Well, Dick, one of the things that was beginning to emerge in your time was fundraising. Of course, it's huge now.
Yeah.
Can you remember some of the early beginnings of fundraising?
Remember very well, Jerry. Mr. Iba's mentor was Dr. Henry G. Bennett. I never knew Dr. Bennett, but I felt like I knew him because Mr. Iba had talked about him so much. And I used to spend hours talking to Mr. Iba about all kinds of philosophy and how to operate and different things. And he used to talk a great deal about Dr. Bennett. And he would tell stories that, Dr. Bennett wasn't real interested in going out and raising money from the alumni. Because once you start getting money from them, you also get their input. And first thing you know, they're trying to run your program and they're trying to run the university. And Dr. Bennett didn't want that. But Dr. Bennett was so strong politically that he felt like he could get things done through politics rather than going out and raising money from alumni. And that's what he was able to do. But unfortunately, he was killed in a plane crash in the early 1950s. And he was at that time, I think, head of the Point 4 program, and was on a trip, I believe, in Ethiopia, and was killed in a plane crash. Well, that didn't help Oklahoma A&M's political power. So the financing got to be more and more of a problem, and frankly, the university used to provide most of the financing for the athletic program here at Oklahoma State. And we began to get pressures from the legislature, and I think OU was one of the main reasons that they couldn't understand how we could compete with them, and we didn't have near the money they had. But part of the reason we could was because the university helped fund athletics. But got into situations like paying tuition and room and board, and there's a lot of juggling done in the early days here at Oklahoma State, where the university could pick up a lot of that funding. But when the legislature started taking looks and they started worrying about it, became where the athletic program was going to have to fund itself. And the only way you could do that was to start raising outside funds. And I remember the first fundraising group that I was associated with, they started an organization. It was a separate corporation here called the Oklahoma Educational Foundation. And a man named Lee Gilstrap, he was a retired colonel from the military and was a speech professor here on campus, and really a neat guy. And they assigned Colonel Gilstrap the responsibility to go out and raise money for athletics. And I remember my first year, I think we raised a little over $2,000, and thought that was just absolutely wonderful to raise that kind of money through outside donations. But that's what Colonel Gilstrap did. And then more evolution came along. Howard Moose Johnson was the assistant to the athletic director here, and he took over some of the fundraising aspects of athletics. And another corporation was formed. It was called the Oklahoma State Athletic Fund Incorporated. And it was designed to raise money for athletics. And people would make checks out to Oklahoma State Athletic Fund, and they'd send them to Moose. And then he'd get them to me, and we'd deposit them into a banking account. Also at that time, a lot of people don't realize it, but the athletic program didn't operate as a department of the university. It was a separate corporation. It was called the Oklahoma A&M Colleges and Universities Athletic Association. We had our own bank account down at Stillwater National Bank. We wrote checks on that bank account. We deposited our money into that bank account. We didn't function exactly as a university department. But again, things began to change, and it became more evident that we needed to become a true department of the university, and we needed to raise funds. And the university was also getting more into fundraising, and the OSU Foundation began to function. I can't remember exactly what the name of it was to begin with. Jerry, you might remember, but I remember Bob Irwin was the director initially of the foundation.
I think Dick, it was called the OSU Development Foundation.
I think that's right. I think that's what it was called. And Bob Irwin, in fact, he'd been one of my instructors. He'd been a marketing professor before taking over the head of the OSU Development Foundation. And they hired a couple of guys to raise money for athletics, because people would give money to athletics. They might not give it to other things, but they would give money to athletics. They hired a guy named Merlin London, really a nice guy, and Tom Turvey. And Tom had been a football coach. And Merlin had been a football coach up at Tonkawa at Northern Junior College. And they were very much in tune with athletics, and they worked for the foundation, but they primarily were out raising money for athletics. And we developed procedures where the money would go directly into the foundation. And there were some other fundraising things that probably went on, but basically we determined that the need was to make sure everything went through that OSU Foundation. And so that was kind of the beginning of it, as I remember. And now, my goodness, how it's grown, and what a wonderful thing.
Change the subject just a little bit. Just share a little bit about your family, Dick. Your wife and your kids, your family life.
Oh, I'm just so fortunate. My wife, we've been married for 52 years now, and she's just a wonderful lady. We were high school sweethearts.
And her name is?
Her name was Gwen,
Gwen.
G-W-E-N. Last name was Howard. And she's still working. She works for a dentist in Oklahoma City. She loves it. She loves people. And so that works out real fine. When our children were growing up, she never worked outside the home at that time. She raised our children. We had a son, Rick. Rick passed away in 1995 from lymphoma. At that time, he was a banker with the Bank of Oklahoma in Tulsa. Quite a sad thing in our lives. But we also have a daughter. Her name is Sandy Warner. Sandy has 5 children. She has triplet. We have triplet granddaughters. They're just a joy. She lives in Edmond, Oklahoma, and she's a housewife there, and a wonderful mother. That's basically our family. And my brother Don is still living, and he lives a little north of Edmond. He and his wife. They've been married about 50 years now. My mother and father are deceased, and my wife's are deceased. But that's kind of our family.
What about community activities, church activities?
Oh, I'm telling you what, I'm enjoying. I belong to the most wonderful church that you could ever imagine. It's the Crossings Community Church in Oklahoma City. And I've been a member there for about 5 years now. Prior to that, we were members of a Baptist church there in Oklahoma City for about 20 years, and I was very active in it. And probably got too involved in it, and it came good time for me to move on, and we've joined Crossings, and it's such a delightful place and such a joy. And I belong to a we call it a community group. We meet together in different people's homes every Sunday night. I belong to a Bible study group. We meet every Tuesday morning at 6:45 in the morning, and just thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a real blessing to us.
Involved in any city clubs or organizations?
Not anymore. I used to belong to a lot of them. I was, of course, I was a Rotarian for a number of years. I belonged to the Rotary Club here in Stillwater, and I moved to Oklahoma City. And I belonged to a club called the Oklahoma City Executives Association. And it was a wonderful organization, belonged to it for a long time, served in every capacity from all the officers' chairs to directors to whatever. Oh, I've been a member of the Oklahoma City Downtown Optimist Club. Oh, I was a board of directors of the Stillwater Country Club at one time. I was a member of another organization I've been very much involved in is the Jim Thorpe Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame. I've been on that executive council forever. I'm not very active anymore in it, although I was inducted into the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame. Just a lot of different organizations. The Olympic Festival. I was on the executive committee for the 89 Olympic Festival that we had in Oklahoma City. I've been involved in a lot of different organizations, a lot of different groups like pension and benefit organizations, banking organizations. Again, there have been a lot of things. Anymore, my church is very, very important, and that's basically it. Plus my tennis. I belong to the Greens Country Club, and I play tennis about 3 days a week, and thoroughly enjoy that. Play a little golf. We don't hardly call it golf anymore. We call it a social, because it really doesn't look like golf the way we hit it anymore.
Yeah. Well, Dick, sort of changing, just been asking, as you view the university, and you've been affiliated since the mid-'50s, with Oklahoma State University. How do you feel about the direction of the athletic program?
I think they're doing a wonderful job. I think, recognizing that you've got to have the funds in order to compete. There's a direct correlation between the amount of money that you have and the success that you have. That's been true. Mr. Iba's program might have been the one that was a little different because he had so much success, not in football though. And I think not having the funding hurt the football situation. And I think the fact that we had to rely on outside guarantees from other schools to provide a lot of the financing for OSU's athletic program, I think that hurt us. I remember one year, Jerry, and you were probably playing when Cutchin was coaching, and he had to play the Big 8 conference schedule, which is rough enough. And then in addition to that, he had to play Arkansas and Little Rock, he had to play Texas and Austin, and he had to play Houston and Houston. Well, that's brutal. Your football team, if they can go through that kind of a schedule and win, and they really are something. And I think that wasn't a good situation to force all of that on the team, having to compete that tough.
Which I think I hear you saying, which is one reason we played Arkansas every year. For example, a lot of people ask, why wasn't that a home-and-home series?
Was the revenue. Mm-hmm. We needed the revenue.
And they would guarantee us really more than we could make playing here in Stillwater.
That's right. Correct? Very much more. Yeah, they would more than double what we could make at a home football game.
Well, speaking of arenas, what do you think about the facilities that have been developed lately? Gallagher Hall Arena now, the football stadium, proposed that.
I think
athletic village.
They're terrific. They're just wonderful. I'm so proud of the facilities. Gallagher Hall is, again, it's fine a place to play basketball and to watch basketball as there is in the country. Of course, it's always been a great facility, but not like it is now. And that football stadium, I am so pleased to see it dressed up and look like it looks. When Terry Don Phillips was here, he was advocating the Gallagher Hall project, and I was trying to tell him, man, we need to do something with that football stadium. It looked awful. And right now it's a show place. And I'm so proud of it and proud to see it. And I hope we can just continue. I hope I'm pulling for this indoor practice facility coming along. I think that would really be beneficial to the football and all the athletic programs to have a facility that you could practice when the weather's bad.
Well, Dick, are there some special memories you have of your time at OSU as a student athlete, as a student? I mean, you've had a long history, long relationship. Are there some special times that you recall?
Oh, I've had so many special times.
Does any of them stand out in your mind?
Oh, gosh, I remember winning the Bluegrass Bowl. I remember very significantly winning the National Baseball Championship, although we didn't realize how significant that was at the time. Our philosophy was we liked to play. We liked the game. We liked the competition. Bring them on. We didn't care who we played. And we had a saying. Old Bob Andrew was one of them that kind of coined it. When you thought about this little Stillwater, Oklahoma, going to go play Southern Cal or UCLA, and we played all of them. We'd always say, there ain't never been a horse that ain't been rode. There ain't never been a rider that ain't been throwed. And if you line up against them, they put their pants on the same way you do, then you got a chance to whip them. And we whipped a lot of them.
You did. Well, speaking of whipping a lot of them, we'd like to kind of change it with you and ask you about Dick. I understand that your was it 50-year reunion?
50, yes.
Yeah.
This 50 years since the 1959 National Championship. Can't
Coming up
believe it.
here pretty quick.
Yeah,
Is that exciting
yeah.
for you?
Oh, it's very exciting, yeah.
What, kind of want to ask you some questions, if I can, about that special season.
Uh-huh.
For example, you were a pitcher,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
When you weren't pitching, did you play a position? Were you a position player at all?
I didn't.
Strictly?
None of us did. I did in high school.
Now, obviously you started, did you relieve some in those days? Did you do both?
We had a pitching staff. We didn't need much relief. We really had a good pitching staff. Joe Horland, he went on and pitched for the White Sox for a long, long time. Joe was a terrific starter. Roy Peterson was another right-hander that was a terrific pitcher. And I was come along and hold up my end, and we generally play a 3-game series on the weekends. That's kind of how we played. We didn't play near as many games, man. We probably played 30 games was probably the tops that we played.
Dick, where did you pitch in the rotation?
I was the third game.
Third
yeah,
game.
I pitched the third game.
Do you remember your that season? What was your one-loss record?
I don't know. I hadn't lost a game until we got to the College World Series. I remember that very vividly. I don't know. I was probably 7 or 8-0 or something like that. I was undefeated. We'd been beaten a couple of times, but I had never lost a game. In fact, I didn't lose a game my sophomore year nor my junior year. In fact, the first game I pitched, they took me up to Manhattan against Kansas State, and I didn't know what was what up there, and I think I shut them out, and I hit a grand slam home run.
Do you remember what your, now again we're talking about the 59 championship season?
Yeah.
Do you remember what your ERA was?
Well, that was what was so significant. The three pitchers, the ERAs were all under 3 runs a game. So we didn't give up many runs, and that's the reason we didn't need a lot of relief pitching. When you went out there, you were usually out there, but we had good defense. We had good defense behind us, and we had good pitching, and we didn't need a lot of relief. And that was one of the things that really came home to roost in the College World Series. We'd won the first couple of games, and I was pitching the third game against the University of Arizona, and I hadn't been beaten, and OSU hadn't been beaten in the tournament either, and I got beat. I sure didn't enjoy that.
What was the format? Was it double? So obviously it was double elimination tournament. And how many teams made it to the College World Series?
I don't know whether it was 8 or 10, and it was double elimination, and.
Did you come out as 2 separate pools, and then the winners would play?
Yeah. That's kind of how it was set up. But Arizona beat us. You had to play several games in a row coming up, and we played our way back through the losers bracket. And I believe San Jose State was the West Coast champion, or the team that represented the West Coast, and then Arizona was also in there, and they were both undefeated. And I don't know, somehow or other they met and knocked each other out, and we worked our way back up through the losers bracket, and we were about out of pitching, and we were going to play Arizona in the finals. And we had a little left-hander named Toby Bensinger, and I bet Toby hadn't pitched 10 innings all year. And he was a good pitcher. We had some other good pitchers, but they never got the chance to pitch because we didn't play that many games, and the pitchers the starters just didn't lose hardly. But we were out of pitching, and it was about 2 nights after I'd gotten beat, and so Toby had to start Bensinger, and what a great job he did. Toby went in there and he pitched, I think, the first 3 or 4 innings, and we were just nip and tuck. I forget what the score was, but then it was either the 4th or 5th inning. They put me back in to relieve, And again, Arizona had beaten me, the only loss I'd had in college. And I really hadn't lost a game in high school either, come to think of it. So I got a chance at Arizona again.
You had a little motivation?
I shut them out. I shut them out the rest of the way.
Did you get the win?
I got the win.
Did you the winning pitcher?
I got the win, but Toby deserved it.
Wow.
You know, bless his heart, he did a wonderful job.
As I recall, you lost 5-3, and then against Arizona the first time, then won 5-3 in the finals. Does that sound about right?
I believe that's about right. I believe that's about right. When I came in, I think we were tied.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was 3-3 when I came in, and we shut them down the rest of the way.
Who got the winning RBI? Do you recall?
No, I don't. I should recall, but I don't.
I'm sure somebody at the reunion will know.
Oh,
right?
they'll know. Oh, they'll know. Oh, yeah. Well, Peterson will know. He'll know everything. Roy was our captain, and he was.
Well, Dick, what? At that time, you didn't have postseason tournaments. You just had to win the conference. Then how did you play your way into the World Series?
Oh no, we had to play off. That was that's another story.
Okay.
There's too many stories, Jerry. You know, we won the Big 8, and we had to play the champion of the Missouri Valley, and that was Bradley. So we had to go to Peoria, and the way we traveled was in cars. We had some of the players, if they had a car that didn't have ball tires on them and stuff, would drive, and of course Coach Green would drive his car, and I don't know, we'd take 4 or 5 cars, and that's the way we traveled. And Coach Green would give us meal money. I think we got $3.50 a day, and that was our meal money. And you'd go eat wherever you could, buy a hamburger or whatever. But we had to drive to Peoria, and we had to drive by way of St. Louis. And we drove through St. Louis and stayed all night in St. Louis, and then drove on to Peoria. Well, we got there, and we played Bradley, and we beat them a doubleheader. And
it was best out of 3
it was 2 out of 3. Yeah, we beat them a doubleheader. So we got ready to come home. And this is a story that we got ready to come home, and we drove back to St. Louis.
Yeah.
And of course, we were all pretty happy. We were all kind of celebrating, and some of us went down to some of the local establishments in the downtown St. Louis area, and we were celebrating a little bit. Well, my celebration didn't last very long because I didn't have enough money to celebrate very long. I decided I'd go back to the hotel room. Well, I went back to the hotel room and went to sleep, and was awaiting a wake-up call the next morning, because we'd always get up early, and we'd always be on the road by about 7 o'clock. And my brother was my roommate. Well, he was one of the celebrators, and he and a carload of them decided they'd go over to East St. Louis. Well, that had been one of the places that Coach Green said, now, whatever you do, don't go to East St. Louis. Well, they went to East St. Louis, and while they were there, they got their tires slit. And so I'm in the hotel asleep, and my brother and I don't know, there's 3 or 4 of them in that car, and so they're trying to struggle around, trying to figure out how to get their tires repaired so they can get back to the hotel so the coach doesn't catch them being out late, and then they got to drive home the next day. Well, to make a long story short, they never got back to the hotel. They just basically took that group and left and went home. Well, everybody thought I was with them, and there I was asleep in the hotel room, and I woke up about 8 o'clock and got up. Man, it's late. What's going on? I don't know where everybody is. And I called down. I said, where's the Oklahoma State baseball team? They said, well, they left about 7 o'clock. I said, no, they wouldn't leave me. And I got dressed, and I went down to the hotel lobby and started talking. Oh yeah, they left about 7 o'clock. Jerry, I didn't have a nickel in my pocket, and there I was in St. Louis. I didn't know anybody in St. Louis, and I was kind of shocked. So I talked to the hotel manager, and I said, I need to make a telephone call. So I called back to Stillwater, and I got a hold of, I tried to call Mr. Iba. Probably glad I didn't get a hold of him. He wasn't home. But I did get a hold of Cliff Spiegel. And he kind of laughed about it. He said, I'll wire you the money and get on the plane, fly into Oklahoma City. Yeah, so he wired the money there, and I got a plane ticket, and I got on a plane and flew into Oklahoma City. Well, all the baseball team then arrived at Gallagher Hall after their drive back from St. Louis, and they started counting noses. And they said, well, where's Dick? And they said, well, he's with you. And they said, no, he's with you. And to make a long story short, they didn't know where I was. And my wife didn't know where I was. She was with her folks in Oklahoma City. And Byron Bird was a trainer. You remember Byron. And Byron called Gwen and said, have you talked to Dick? No, she hadn't talked to me. I hadn't called anybody. I was in process of going to catch that flight and come on to Oklahoma City. And no one knew where I was. And I remember my wife ended up calling Byron back and saying, well, you guys better find him. You took him up there. And, Byron in his congeniality said, well, who do you think I am, the FBI? And it ended up being kind of a funny story, and it all turned out good because when I got into Oklahoma City, I called my wife, and she said, where are you? Now, everybody's been looking for you. I said, well, I had to catch a plane home to Oklahoma City. But anyway, that's another one of those trivia stories that took place.
Dick, I'm going to stop it one more time, okay? Okay, we're recording again with Dick Soergel. Dick, we were talking about the road to what we call the road to Omaha nowadays.
Uh-huh.
But so you beat Bradley and Doubleheader. Now, did that get you to the College World Series?
That got us to the College World Series.
So there's from 4 different or 8 different regions of the country.
Right.
You kind of won your district or your regional.
That's right.
Okay. Well, now what was the atmosphere like at Omaha? Was it like now? Was it a big deal in those days?
It was a big deal in those days. The people in Omaha really did support it. They would assign some group to take care of each team, and they were more or less your sponsors, and they would take you out usually to some kind of a feed one night, and really treated you good, and the crowds, they absolutely supported that tournament. It was that stadium, what is it, Rosenblatt? I believe that's what it's called. Stadium would be packed with people. And they loved that baseball. And the baseball was good. It was, college baseball was good to watch. And it was really, really well supported.
Do you have some special memories of the College World Series? Some special moments? Of course, you're talking about the games you pitched in. Obviously, we talked about earlier about the 2 Arizona games and the championship game when it was big. Other things you remember about the College World Series?
Not really specifically. I just remember how we always hung in there. We would, maybe be behind in a ball game, and we just our team just never ever gave up. And somebody, there would always be somebody come through. It wouldn't be the same guy. Mm-hmm. As we used to tell, somebody's got to pick it up. Mm-hmm. Somebody's got to pick us up. And I can remember. Occasionally, Grayson Mersch was our first baseman, maybe as good a glove man as you'd ever find, but not a good hitter. And a couple of ball games, I remember where he hit one out of the park. Bruce Andrew was always a dangerous hitter. My brother was an outstanding hitter. He had a whale of a College World Series. He did really a good job of hitting. We just had different people that came along. It was a true team. Mm-hmm. James Dobson. He had a phenomenal series. He was voted the outstanding player in the College World Series. I don't know what he hit up there in that series, and he played third base and made every play. It just fit together.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it was a team that played together. Ray Bond was our catcher, a fine, terrific catcher. Benny Bancroft played center field, and boy, he was a terrific center fielder. Connie McAvoy was a walk-on, and Connie, he played left field and just did a superb job. Tim Green was another outstanding player. Tim and my brother, they alternated quite a bit, or he and Connie would alternate. They were all outfielders, and somebody would always come along and pick up the team when you needed it. It wouldn't be the same person.
So now you pitched 2 games, and in those days, I mean, the pitcher hit for himself, right?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Now, how did you get some hits in the College World Series?
I don't remember whether I got any hits in the College World Series, but I was a good hitter.
What was your batting average that year? Do you recall?
I don't recall what it was, but I could hit in high school. My first year in high school, I hit 400. The summer after I graduated from high school, I went to Liberal, Kansas to play in the Van Johnson League in the summer. I started out being a pitcher, and we didn't have any enough hitting, and so they moved me to third base, and I had to clean up for the Liberal Van Johnson team. So I was always a pretty good hitter.
Did you jack any out your senior year?
You bet. You bet. I could hit one out.
Oh, great. Well, how special is it for you being part of that? That's the only OSU baseball team that won an NCAA championship.
Well, I think it's very special to be a part of it. I'm just amazed that Oklahoma State hadn't won more championships with as good a baseball teams as we've had. But everything has to work right. And that's what I'm saying. Our team had the chemistry. Mm-hmm. It fit together, and things worked out, just really worked out right.
You think about Chad Bryan, I think he got to the finals one year, had a runner-up. Of course, Gary Ward got there 2 or 3 times, had a runner-up. He got in the finals, but never got there. But so out of all those years, like I said, all the great teams, and we've had all the great players, the Robin Venturas and et cetera, the 1959 team was the only team that made it all the way.
I know it. Mm-hmm. I pitched, I played for another team, a semi-pro team, and we won the national championship in 1964 in Wichita. And I got to pitch the final game in that one too, got to win. So,
wow.
And again,
championship game wins.
So it was chemistry. Again, we had a team there in Wichita that I was living in Stillwater at the time, and almost everybody on that team had played in the big leagues. We had a great semi-pro baseball team, but I was fortunate enough to get to pitch the final game.
Well, Dick, speaking of different eras and teams, how do you think the 1959 team ranks in relation to some of the outstanding teams in the Gary Ward, Frank Anderson eras?
Oh, I doubt if the 59 team would stack up on an individual basis, but on a team basis they would, because they pulled together so much. Athletes on an individual basis, I would say, Horland would stack up with any of them, because Joe was he had a slider at that time that was really good, and he also kept the ball down, and that was one of the things that we worked at. You didn't give hitters a good pitch to hit. Make them hit it on the ground. Keep that ball down around the knees. It was also a different era in baseball where we didn't mind intimidating hitters. It was pretty much a given that if you got 2 strikes and no balls on that batter, you were going to knock him down, and that was just the way the game was played. If a guy hit a home run off of you, if he came up the next inning, he was going to test the dust. You were going to back him up, and that's the way we played the game. And there wasn't anything wrong with it. And also, you didn't have helmets, and nobody wore batting helmets. You just had the old baseball cap, and the hitters knew. They knew it was kind of part of the intimidation of the game. You got some hitter, and you'd watch him. He'd get up that plate and he'd start digging in and trying to dig those spikes in there and making a big hole he was going to stand in. Well, you'd loosen him up a little bit. Didn't mind dusting him off. It was just, that was part of the way the game was played, and all of our pitchers, they didn't have any fear about knocking batters down. And generally, if you knock a batter down and he's up there in the next pitch and you throw that curveball low and away, he has a hard time chasing it. And it's not easy.
Back a little bit,
it's not easy. It's not easy. And we had pitchers. All of our pitchers had good control. We didn't walk a lot of people. Didn't put people on, and had good defense behind us. But as far as if you were to take individual positions, 59 team, I doubt if it. There's not a Robin Ventura or there's not a Incaviglia on there. But they were all good. See, we had a number of guys that signed professional contracts.
Which ones were those?
Well, Dobson signed, Bond signed, Mersch signed, Peterson signed. We had a lot of them that signed contracts. Probably the guy that, and I don't know what happened to Dobson because when he was a junior or a sophomore in college, I mean, he was absolutely terrific, and all through college. But something happened to him later. Might have been football. He tried to play football. Might have been that he got his shoulder hurt in football. But I thought he'd make it to the big leagues because he was really gifted. I'd played with. That's another interesting thing, Jerry. We had 4 guys on that national championship team from Capitol Hill High School in Oklahoma City.
Really?
Yes. See, I was from Capitol Hill. Our catcher, Ray Bond, was from Capitol Hill. James Dobson was from Capitol Hill. My brother Don was from Capitol Hill. Then we had 2 from Stillwater. Bob and Bruce Andrew played short and second. They were Stillwater guys. Connie McAvoy, he was from Southeast in Oklahoma City. Toby Bensinger was from Midwest City. Grayson Mersch was from up around Grand Lake. We were Oklahoma kids. Bancroft was a Texas boy, and Harlan was from San Antonio. But the rest of us were just little Oklahoma kids that we just liked to play, and we played hard.
Was Harlan the only one that made it to pros? I mean,
made it to the major leagues.
Yeah,
he's the only one that made it. Bond had a good chance. He signed with the Cardinals, and was doing pretty good. But he happened to come along right at the time Tim McCarver was playing in front of him, and he couldn't push McCarver out. And Dobson, I don't know what happened to him. Something happened that he didn't hit like he did as a youngster.
Did you ever think about baseball as opposed to trying pro football?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, whether I was going to sign a baseball contract or a football contract.
Did you get an offer?
Not really. I wasn't going to sign a baseball contract unless they paid me good. And I told them that because I didn't want to kick around in the minor leagues. It wasn't worth it to me if you had a chance to go right to the big leagues, it'd be fine. But I had too many friends that played Class D League, Class B League, Class C League, and that wasn't any kind of life. And again, I had a family, and I was interested in my family, interested in supporting them, and I wasn't going to do that. And I didn't. I didn't have the greatest speed. I could throw fairly hard, but I wasn't just overpowering. And old Mickey Cochran told me one night. Mickey Cochran was a long-time Hall of Fame catcher. He was a scout. I forget who. I used to talk to a lot of scouts. But he said, you need to develop one more pitch. And I never had the time to really work on developing another pitch. I was always doing too many other things. And he was right. I had a good fastball. I had a couple of curveballs that I threw, but I needed one more pitch. I needed to learn how to throw a knuckleball or a slider or a sinker. Sinker would have been the pitch, but I never worked on it. And so I really, really thought that I'd have a chance I thought I'd make that football team because I could throw the football. Even though I hadn't thrown drop back passes as such, I could throw the ball. and I thought I could make that football team. And I was disappointed that I didn't. In fact, the coach, when he cut me, I was very disappointed because I'd talked to him earlier. I said, if you're going to cut me, I need to know early because I'd like to, I've got a family and I need to take care of them. I'd like to go someplace. He said, no, we're going to keep you till we played the last exhibition game, and that was right before the season started. And if you were there during the season, then they had to pay you what your contract said. So that's when they cut me, and that's when I said, professional sports is a pure business, and that was it.
Dick, have you followed the baseball programs in the years since here at OSU?
I followed them certainly when Chet was here because I was still part of the university, and then when Gary Ward came in, I followed them some. Not nearly as close as I have. They play so many games anymore. I don't know how they go to school. See, that's one of my concerns about baseball. I've always been an advocate of trying to move college baseball to the summer. I think it should be played in the summer.
Gary Ward felt that way too, didn't he?
I think to some degree he did. To play enough games, you need to play in the summer, and there needs to be some way to finance it. And I think Gary had a plan as to how to do it, but he couldn't get enough support to get it done. But I don't know how these kids can play 50 and 60 games in the spring and go to school and make their grades. And to me, education is just too important. That's the reason I came to college. I wanted an education. And again, I'm grateful that I had that opportunity and that Oklahoma State did give me a good education. I felt like I got a good education here.
Dick, what do you think about Frank Anderson and the team nowadays, the program? Have you had a chance to watch some of the games under Frank?
I think he's going the right direction. I think their pitching is getting better. I've been disappointed. That's the disappointment that I've had with OSU's baseball is their pitching. They give up too many runs. With Gary, when Gary Ward was here, they're hitting. They could score runs, but their pitching was suspect. And then, of course, when Holiday took over, the same thing. And I thought when Frank came in, he was touted to be such a fine pitching coach at Texas. I thought we'd really, really do a lot better pitching. And last season, they started doing better pitching. And I hope that continues this year because I'm a great believer that if you don't give up many runs, you're going to be in the ballgame. And there's something about that pitching and defense that's just absolutely important to me.
It is. Dick, let me kind of wind it up here a little to sort of ask, I'm thinking of Dick Soergel, the football player, the basketball player, the baseball player, the student athlete, the business manager for nearly 18 years. Dick, a lot of people know you and through the years, how would you want people to remember Dick Soergel? How do you hope they'll remember you?
Oh, that's a hard question. I would probably say I'd like to be remembered, first of all, as someone that kept his word. I don't know of anybody I've lied to that, and maybe that may be to a fault. I'd also like to be remembered as being a friend, someone that takes care of their friends, and I'd also like to be remembered as a husband and a father. I think those are the things that I'd like to be remembered for.
Is there anything we haven't covered? I know we've been a plethora of things we've talked about. There's some things that you'd like to comment on or bring up that we haven't covered?
There's so many things. Again, I've got so much trivia that it's incredible to try to remember it. I was thinking back. I can remember our basketball team when we went to the West Coast when I was playing, and we played UCLA and we played USC, and I think we beat UCLA and USC beat us. We opened one of those big arenas out on the West Coast. We played the best teams. I remember getting to go to the Missouri Valley teams, going to Cincinnati and Bradley and St. Louis and Drake. There's just so much that comes to my mind of experiences that took place and how Oklahoma State offered me that opportunity. And I'll always be grateful.
Dick, I've heard you refer to Oklahoma A&M several times. You know, the name changed when you were a student
It
in
did.
57.
It did.
How did you feel about that at the time, changing from Oklahoma A&M to Oklahoma State?
Well, I thought it was a great change. I thought it was a very significant change. I knew that Oklahoma A&M, it was an Oklahoma A&M college, but I knew it had the curriculum that a university had. But a lot of people didn't recognize it as such. And we were called Cal College and a lot of those names that they still call us to some degree. But changing the name to a university was representative. And I thought it was very fitting and a very, very good thing. And also getting out of the Missouri Valley and going into the Big Eight was also a major thing. And that brings up one more story that Mr. Ivy used to tell me. They worked on getting in the Big Eight Conference for a long time before they did. Dr. Wilhelm, he forged some friendships with some of the presidents, I think the president of Colorado and I think the president of Nebraska, to try to help us get in. And the University of Oklahoma always fought us from getting in. They didn't want Oklahoma A&M or Oklahoma State to get in that conference. And they vetoed us many, many times when it was brought up to offer an invitation to Oklahoma State to become a member of the conference. And then I think how when the votes were pretty well in hand, the people that nominated us to go in was the University of Oklahoma. And I always think, boy, you talk about hypocritical. They were the ones that I think made the recommendation to accept us into the conference after they had tried to keep us out for all those years, until Dr. Wilhelm forged enough alliances to have enough votes to get us into the Big Eight Conference.
Dick, a couple other instances that I might ask you about. One, do you like the name change to Cowboys? I guess informally we've been called Cowboys before, even when we were in A&M, but official name to Oklahoma State Cowboys in terms of our athletic teams. Did you like that?
I do. I think the Cowboys are very fitting. I had no problem with being an Aggie because that's what I came. I was an Aggie when I came here. It didn't. I liked being an Aggie. That was one of the main reasons I came to this school. It wasn't only Mr. Iba. It was the friendliness of the people here. They were down to earth and they would speak to you, and it was just a warmer place. I'd been to OU so many times, both my brothers going there, and I lived pretty close there. I went to all the OU football games, but the atmosphere on this campus was just different. And when they changed the name to the Cowboys, I thought it was very fitting. Of course, I remember Pistol Pete. He rode in the homecoming parade when I was in school, and I remember they took his guns away from him because he'd get a little rambunctious, but he was a tough-looking old character.
Well, now, and you're talking about Frank Eaton,
I'm talking about Frank Eaton. I'm talking about the real deal.
Let me follow on the question then.
Okay.
The mascot, Pistol Pete. Now, it's my understanding in homecoming game, I guess it was the Air Force game in '58, which was 50 years ago last fall, was the first official appearance of Pistol Pete, the mascot, in a football game. Do you remember that at all? I mean, obviously you were playing. But
just vaguely, but I do remember it, and how, it was really something because, again, we related it to Frank Eaton. Because our group had seen him. He was around here. He was on the campus some. But we had another guy. Again, this is real trivia. That was his name was Gordon Pock, and Gordon had a mental problem. But he used to be on our sideline, and he had a little red wagon. He'd pull up and down the sideline, and they let him do that. And again, it was Oklahoma A&M and Oklahoma State was a caring group. And then when Frank Eaton, we recognized him, and you could see the similarities in the Pistol Pete image. I thought it was a good thing. The only time I didn't think it was a good thing was when I was trying to make the football arrangements, and Pistol Pete wanted us to try to carry that big head on our airplane, and we couldn't get it on there, and I didn't want to mess with it. That was the only negative thing that I can remember about Pistol Pete, because they had a difficulty transporting that thing around, but it wouldn't hardly fit through the door of the airplane, and also, if you remember Phil Cutchin, he didn't want anything that was going to be distracting, so we had a little bit of problem, a little friction there with Pistol Pete.
Dick, do you remember at all? Of course, you're into the game, but in that '58 season, do you ever remember seeing the Pistol Pete mascot on the sidelines at all?
Oh, Jerry, that's another thing that, again, I'm a throwback. I don't fit the modern times, but I never paid any attention to a crowd. The crowd wasn't my motivator. I'd have played ball out in the backyard or in the vacant lot or wherever, because I like to play. I like the game. I like the competition. And it bothers me sometimes that athletes have to be motivated by music or by a crowd. That just never did ring my bell. And I relate more to, I can remember very distinctly when I was playing basketball for Mr. Iba, how we would go out on the basketball floor. The way we were introduced was by Otis Wilde on the microphone. And I can remember we would all have a black warm-up on with a towel around our neck, and we'd be on the end of the court ready to go out on the floor. And Otis Wilde, in his old low, gravelly voice, would say, "Ladies and gentlemen, the varsity." That was the introduction. And we went out and we did our business. We went out and we played. We didn't need to have spotlights put on us and the music blaring loud. We didn't have to have that to motivate us. We were the varsity, and we were supposed to perform, and we did. And some of this carrying on today, I don't enjoy it as a fan. I don't enjoy all that noise. I like to go see the ball game. I didn't come to watch all that jumping around and stuff that they do now. And I'm sorry, a lot of people do. They think that's entertainment. Well, if that's entertainment, I'd just soon be left out of it.
Old school, right?
I like to watch the ball game. And I don't need all that noise and hoopla.
Ooh. Dick, anything else that we hadn't covered?
Oh, probably a lot, Jerry, but that's so much trivia. You guys will cut through that and see.
Appreciate it, Dick. Thank you so much.
Oh, you bet.